Some of the biggest advancements have obviously been the experimentation that we've seen in DeFi. I think these are interesting progress points. We've seen some obviously very non-credible projects, but we've also seen some advancement in the industry, and I think in the technology, and I think this is great that we're starting to see use cases play out, even though there's a lot of risk being taken and people have lost funds. But I think that that's at least a good way that Ethereum's obviously moving into being more of a utilizable network and a protocol level. I think that the logical progression of Bitcoin adoption with the central bank stimulus, both fiscal and monetary, has been something that is obviously very good for the industry. As high as the Bitcoin price goes, the more security we see to the network and the more overall adoption. It's just a game theoretic, psychological process of the price moving higher. So I think it's great. I think it's great that we're at 20,000 or thereabouts, and the amount of media focus on this is still quite low, which means that the run into 2021 can probably be quite significant. So I think we're just getting started in the beginning of what I think will be a fairly momentous and probably the most publicized Bitcoin rally that we've seen in its history. Obviously, the progress with China and the CBDC launch that they made, I think is a major one. I think that China's going ahead and launching that so fast will actually really inspire a lot of people to move into the space a lot quicker. 2020 was a very big year for Diginex. We took the company public. We're now listed on Nasdaq since the 1st of October. That's been an amazing experience for everyone, and obviously being in front of a lot of investors and talking about the very differentiated approach that Diginex has to the full digital asset ecosystem. I think that the performance of the stock is going to continue into next year, along with the overall performance of the industry. So that's rather exciting. Our custody platform was accredited with the Cyber Essentials Plus accreditation, which is the Ministry of Defense designed accreditation for cybersecurity. This is obviously a very big accreditation. I don't think anyone else in this industry has that level of accreditation, so we're very proud of that. And what we've done with that custodian is really build risk committee adapted governance processes to make sure that our custodian is the institutional custodian of choice for these institutions coming in looking for third-party custodians, which I think is going to be a big feature in 2020 as well. Our trading platform, Diginex Access, partnered with Itivity. So that's a further partnership to our FIS partnership. That means now we integrate with their portfolio management system, and that integration completed just last week, which means now that we can offer that out to a further 1,600 institutional clients for that trading platform. Our exchange launched as well in July. So EQOS, we had the biggest trading day was a few weeks ago. We did $20 million of volume. So that's been growing really very nicely. I think last time I spoke to Forkast.News, we were on $5 million of volume. So doing a big peak at 20 million, we were very happy about that. So things growing nicely there. And we roll out our first derivative product. 2021 will bring with it further advancement in the CBDC space. I think that we're going to see Japan as a rival economy to China in the trading space really move forward and want to effectively compete and make sure that they're not being left behind. We have seen signs of consultations happening with many of our partners in Japan with the Bank of Japan directly around this, and it seems that that's being expedited at the moment. I think that in Europe, you're going to see probably the Bank of England be one of the first movers. I don't know if they'll actually get to the point of issuing their central currency this year, but obviously with the pressure that Brexit is going to likely bring onto the economy, I think that it makes sense for the UK to try and be bringing forward their plans for that central bank digital currency. The US, I think that the Fed is biding their time. don't think that they're being rushed into it, but obviously they want to keep an eye on what's going to be happening with China, and the way that, their current dollar hegemony over the global economy, how that may or may not be affected by China's digital yuan. So I think that the Fed will be closely watching. From what I understand, they've been biding their time at this point in time. Other things for us, I think that custody, third-party custodianship is going to become a real requirement for institutions moving into the Bitcoin space, but broadly into digital assets. These institutions can't custody their own Bitcoin. They can't sit there with ledgers and Trezors. They can't sit on exchanges with their balances. So they need to have third-party, regulated, clean custodians. And obviously that's what we've designed with DigiVault. We've designed it with these institutions in mind. And we're already starting to see, specifically post the OCC's announcement that all banks in the US now have the capacity to be custodying Bitcoin and other digital assets, that a lot of these banks are trying to understand exactly how this works. And that's true across banks across Europe as well, that are also trying to understand how they can offer these services to their clients. So I think custody is going to be a very big thing for 2021. I also think that we're likely to see a Bitcoin ETF for the first time. I think Jay Powell, as one of his outgoing comments in the Fed, was that he expects to see a Bitcoin ETF this year. And I think that narrative change is something that's, it's been building for a long time, obviously. I think that there are a lot of credible players that have obviously been trying to push forward with a Bitcoin ETF for the longest time. The current products out there are a little bit limited in their offering. So if you look at Grayscale, it obviously trades on a massive premium, and has the propensity to trade on a massive discount as well, due to the inflexibilities of the creation redemption profile of that structure. So I think having a proper ETF in the space will be much better for investors that are looking for an equity way to be accessing this asset class. So I think that will happen. I think VanEck have a very credible proposition. They're obviously a very experienced ETF manager. So I think that's quite likely that we'll see that. Borrowing and lending, I think, will be another big feature. We've seen borrowing and lending balances increase by 10 times this year, gone from 1 billion of assets to about 10 billion of assets being lent out in the space. I think that obviously with the growth of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies going into next year, I think that we're likely to see those balances increase by another tenfold. This is what you really need for a developing asset class. You need to be able to borrow these assets so that you can short them, or you can provide them for positions for financing, whatever it might be. That's how we see the industry evolve and grow. And that leads me into my second point, because really relating to that, you need borrow and lending to be able to have a viable derivative offering. We're obviously rolling out a lot of derivatives in 2021, with our first coming next week, but this is really going to be propagated by that borrowing and lending capability. If you want to be buying a call option to be able to hedge that, you might need to short the underlying asset and trade the volatility around that. So borrowing and lending and derivatives will grow hand in hand. I think we see about $20 billion of derivatives traded per day currently. I think that could be up to 10 times growth as well this year, obviously, as we see the expansion of the underlying asset. So yeah, very big year for growth for our industry, derivatives, borrowing and lending, but also that custody piece as well for the institutions as they start to come in. So very excited about 2021, what it means for Diginex and EQOS. Just as a closing comment, I'd like to say that I think 2020 has obviously been an extremely hard year for a lot of people. It's obviously had a benefit on our industry, that it's really propagated the growth of Bitcoin with the central bank's policy responses, and the industry as a whole, I think, has expanded exponentially. I think that central banks coming into the space is actually very positive for people understanding how this technology works and being more comfortable with digital assets and digital currencies. So 2021 really is shaping up to be probably the biggest year this industry has ever seen. I've referenced 10 times growth in both borrowing and lending and the derivative space. So we're extraordinarily excited about what this is going to be, and hopefully a much better year for the world as well as we get to grips with this global pandemic.
If you like that, come back for more. All you have to do is click like, always comment, we love that, and subscribe. And don't forget to watch the next one.